You know, they realized that it was a very haunted location. And it was a joke. What is happening with you people in Missouri? Why is this always so haunted? You know, and not only that is you have one of the most iconic hauntings in the history of paranormal events in the world, the St. Louis exorcism case. So, that's important. That's an important case, whether you like it or not.
Well, and Stephen, you did some work on those locations, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I was one of the first investigators, actually, one of the first investigators in a lot of the locations. Actually, the church brought me into the locations. And I look back at it now, and it was probably not the best time or the best thing for me to be doing. But there was one of the locations that I went to is considered the Holy Grail of that case that no one's ever seen. And you didn't get to see it in Haunted Boy, folks, because I'm one of the few people that know where it is. It's in a hospital. It's on a hospital floor where in 1983 they picked up everything off this hospital floor and left it. It's always been rumored that one of the priests at the end of the exorcism of the boy was, like you saw in The Exorcist, William Peter Blatty did a lot of investigation before he wrote that book, folks. And there was always that rumor that one of the priests was possessed.
Right.
This hospital floor actually housed a priest until his death. That's the only thing it housed was that priest. The moment of his death, they picked up and they moved. And as a matter of fact, here's the church's views and what the church said. The church said his last words were to a nurse, and he said, "I'm going to kill you, bitch."
Oh, wow.
Very haunted place, very haunted location. Have pictures of it. You don't see it because not many people knew, and they wanted my reaction. I think that was one of the main things. They knew, you live through this haunting, you're living through this haunting. Let's get your reactions, and we want your reaction to this. I think they were looking for some answers of how can we deal with this, because we have this whole floor of this hospital we can't do anything with, and we're hiding it. And I mean, to get up to this floor of the hospital, you went behind a normal door, and then there was this little bitty freight elevator that took you up. I mean, it was very covert, very get smartish, And it was like, because I was like, the main elevator's down there, and they're like, they open the door and they go, no, we have to go to this one.
How long was the priest there?
He was there from the moment till the end of the exorcism all the way to his death. And I went back and I looked, and I'm like, okay, let's take the time of the exorcism and go 1983.
Oh, wow.
That would fit. It fits.
Okay.
It fits, and it's like, they're not kidding me,
So he was there a very long time then.
Right. Can you imagine what it was like, though? They wouldn't take me all the way to his room. They said that the room, the paranormal activity that was coming from the room, I could not go into the room because it was too much.
Oh, wow.
It protected that room. That room was sealed from people, They realized...
Oh, good evening. This is
my butt on TV?
I think it might be. You might want to sit down. Oh. This is Paranormal Science Lab Live. I'm Lisa.
I'm John.
And
my butt.
And in his butt in an opportune position. We thank everyone for joining in this evening. You just heard a clip from our last discussion with Steven LaChance about the exorcist sites that are related to the book and the movie. And Steven joins us again. How are you doing, Steven?
I'm doing great. How are you all today?
Good.
Very good.
Good to see you.
Very good. Stephen, we really didn't get to finish your thoughts last time. It seems like something just didn't want that conversation to end. Do you want to sum up real quick?
Well, in summary of what we were talking about there is that, there's more to that case than meets the eye. There's a lot of different things out there that try to take you in false directions. When you get down to the reality of what that case was, and what actually happened there. In the case of what we were talking about, which was a hospital floor in a hospital that no one knows about, that is completely deserted, that they actually house the priest. Now, William Peter Blatty, he did his research for The Exorcist. He's one of the few people to read the real diary of the exorcism, which is kept under lock and key and guard at St. Louis University. So it is not surprising, you know, if you look at the film, at the end of the film, the priest is actually becomes possessed by the demon. The demon goes from the girl into the priest in the film. What we're finding now, because of the locations that I was given and brought to by the church itself, what we're looking at now is we see, wow, you know, that Blatty was probably right on there. That it did go from the boy into one of the priests. I have an idea in my mind which priest it was. It wasn't Halloran or Baldwin, who everybody wants to talk about those two priests. However, there was another priest that was in there quite often that they talked about. They read him stories during the day. A priest that had an alcoholic. He was an alcoholic, and the boy would whisper into his ear at times and tell him secrets. And I'm wondering if, you know, and it was upsetting to this priest because he was telling him future events. And I'm wondering if he was telling him, you know, that I'm going to leave this boy and come into you. It's kind of an interesting thought. But you have to make correlations because no one is going to tell you exactly what happened there. You know, so I think I got further than anybody else has ever gotten, though. This place is like the Holy Grail. I mean, people talk about it, but no one is actually, that, as far as researcher, writer, investigator, had actually had the privilege of actually being there. I was one of the first, so that was actually the first there. And to my knowledge, no one has come after. So it's kind of interesting. So it's a good story. St. Louis is known for its hauntings, and it's not just the city of the exorcism. We talk about that a lot when we talk about St. Louis. But St. Louis is one of the most haunted cities in America.
Well, it's one of the oldest. We don't really think of it since it's in the Midwest, but it was settled very early by the French, and so it has a lot of history.
Well, I was just out today, Lisa. I was out at Kaskaskia Ford in Illinois, which is just across the river, and that fort was around since 1695. Mm-hmm. To give you an idea, and you know, interesting side note on that is my great-great-great-grandfather came from France to Canada to that fort, and that's where he lived for a period of time with his wife. So my family has ties there as well. And then they went on and they founded the town of St. Genevieve, Missouri. But it's really interesting when you get into it. You know, it's always about the story for me. It's the history. You know, paranormal evidence is cool. I'm going to tell you, I mean, I've seen some amazing things. But the evidence doesn't mean anything without that history and the story behind it. That's where you I really get excited about it. And I think people in general are more excited about the story than anything else.
I think people want context. We had this discussion last night at a live event, in fact, that without a story, without the background, there's no context, and it's kind of like getting a tweet or a text randomly, and you have no idea what it really means.
Well, you know, you see, and we have a lot of great teams out there, a lot of fantastic teams, and a lot of people are learning. And, you know, there is a learning curve just like anything else. And I think there's a lot of teams out there that, you know, it's the evidence becomes the most important thing. And it's not just the evidence. You have to be able to step back in time and try to figure out, if we're going to figure out anything about this, if we're able to figure out anything about this, it's going to take some brain power. Your brain is going to have to be your most important tool. And you're going to have to step back. And in the past is where you're going to see how the haunting became a haunting. And in those answers is where the answer lies. You know, how does this happen? Can this happen to me? Can this happen to my grandmother, my father, my mother, my sister, my brother? whatever, the only way we're going to find those answers is to find out how they're developed. And I'm going to tell you something. One of the things that I think that if I could give a warning ever to anybody is be careful what you do in this life, because it will affect you in the afterlife and affect those around you. I go to numerous places time and time again, and I get the EVPs, help me, save me, God help me, that sort of thing. There's something there. There's something there. And in the histories of those places, you look and you usually find there's some kind of abuse or something that someone did something to someone else. There you go.
Yeah, something violent, something dysfunctional, just something that is not in the norm. Well, in fact, sort of interesting, as you said, often you get EVPs, etc., help me, or they're waiting for a certain person, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But often, usually, I'd say more often than not, they don't refer to their own death. That's more unusual. Right. Last night we were actually investigating, and we were actually getting responses in French to that they were there because they were dead, and responding in French. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. And then you get EVPs like one we got one time that says hungry. And it puts it all into perspective. I mean, that's probably that's probably the EVP that's probably affected me the most, is just simply because it makes you think about, well, why didn't I have that donut this morning? What if it's my last donut ever?
Right. What if it is? I mean, I could take you back to, I've heard other EVPs like my eyes. And anybody that knows anything about the preparing of bodies, a lot of times to keep the eyes closed, we'll glue the eyes shut, or back in the old days, they actually sewed them shut. I can't speak, but they're speaking to you through the EVP, but, at the same time you go, well, your mouth's sewed shut, and I have to think, I had this discussion with a doctor of Dr. Michael Henry from St. Louis recently, and he was saying, well, I don't think cemeteries are that active. And I'm like, well, you're probably not going to the right ones then.
Well, I think there are some that are not haunted, but the ones I find that we tend to get evidence at that seem to be haunted often have other events have happened there that would explain it. Either a death there or unmarked graves, something along that lines.
I'm going to give everybody something to do. Those of you that have ghost box out there, and those of you that don't, go over to Amazon and get a ghost box. They're not much. And I want you to take a cord, and I want you to connect the jack from the ghost box, and I want you to connect it into your car. Now, you can do this with the little cassette tape that goes in the cassette player, or most of the news cars, you could just plug it right on in. And what it will essentially do is turn your car into a ghost box itself. Then I want you to go to a cemetery and drive around the cemetery with the ghost box, and then come back and talk about that.
Well, yeah,
it's crazy. But I want to do that with you, by the way, Lisa. I want to take you to some cemeteries when you come up.
Well, we'd love to do that.
I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
We are definitely in. And actually, we do know someone down in Arkansas that does that with his car and his Russ.
Yeah, he's actually got EVPs that says, "I hate to travel."
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. You can even ask at any given point if you're in a haunted town. You can even ask it to. Well, we were in one haunted town and we asked it to give us directions, and then it put us in front of. And I'm going to be real careful what I said, but it put us in front of an institution type building. And as soon as we were in front of this building, over the voice box came a really low voice, and it said, "I see you." Creepy, huh? It creeped me out. I was like, holy smoke. But yeah, I mean, it's so much fun to do. What are we talking about there? We're talking about thinking outside the box. It's not the way everybody else is doing it. It's the way you decide to do it. You decide to do it differently, and that's when you're going to find that you get the most fun stuff, the greatest evidence, and the leads that you need to do the research that you need to do. So don't follow the herd. Walk to your own drummer. I think that's the most important thing to tell a new group, isn't it?
I think so. I think it's good to follow in footsteps of people who've been successful at it, and then figure out what makes sense for you and take that next step.
Well, yeah, there's a little bit of that too, but you know what? I look at groups that develop, okay, and the majority of them, I think you guys agree once I say this, the majority of the groups that develop out there, you see them come and they're strong, they're producing, you're getting a lot of evidence, you're getting this and that. You know, when I founded NPR and I had that group before I retired it, that group was like that. It was just strong. The craziest evidence you ever see in your life. And then all of a sudden in 2007, you know, when I closed it off and I left, what happened is that the group, you know, kind of died into nothingness. Well, you know, and it's not them. It's not them, and it's not anybody in particular. But I see this with new groups, and I think what is happening is because when you're new, when you're fresh, you're hungry, number one, for it. And then number two, you're not afraid to take that step outside of normal, what they would consider normal paranormal group behavior, which would be, you know, the usuals, you know. And I think that's interesting to me. Because what happens, and I've said this to groups, I've said this for years, is, you know, be really careful that you're not boxing yourself in to what everybody else is doing, that you lose track of what you could be doing. Because I think there's a danger in that. And I think we see that with a lot of the groups. And that's why they come on real strong. You've seen the groups do that. And then they kind of fizzle out.
Yeah, in fact, that happens a lot. And, you know, they kind of cycle in and out. And then there's just, you know, any given area, then you have a small core that maintain over time.
Right,
and
right.
I think you're right. I agree with you. And we tend to be like that. We tend to reject what a lot of people do as well because it doesn't work for us.
Well, but do you think it gets a group gets to the point where, you know, they become a little bit more established and stuff, and they hit that point where it's like, okay, I'm afraid to do this or tell somebody I'm doing this because I don't want to either make anybody angry or I don't want to be made fun of or, you know, laughed at or ridiculed or any of those other things because it's so outside the norm. If we all did that, then innovation stops, doesn't it? You know, I mean, if we all took that attitude that, you know, okay, that we already know everything that we know about how to do this, and this is the way we all should be doing this, well, I'm going to tell you something. We've all been doing it that way forever, and the answers still have not been found. You know, if you're going to innovate a field of study, that has that thinking outside the box, that constant creation of new ideas has to be happening. The only way that happens is if you do not allow yourself to be boxed in, number one, and number two is that you talk to each other.
I agree. And compare notes and see what works, what doesn't. And often what works for one doesn't work for another as well.
Well, and I think
exactly. I mean, it's true.
I think a lot of paranormal groups too forget that it's not a competition. We're not competing against each other for anything.
Yeah.
I mean, this is...
Yeah, and that's when the best work's done. When you look at it as not a competition of, I'm going to be the best, and you start looking at it as that maybe it's not I'm going to be the best, but maybe I'm going to do the best work I possibly could do, then it becomes a little bit different. You know, I think the competition thing is damaging. I mean, it's like, you know, it's not, you know, it's okay to want to do a TV show or get out there and share your stuff. I love that. Do that. That's great. That's wonderful. Get out with your own cameras, fill your own things to share. You know, but don't let that be the thing that guides you in your research, because if you say that you're researching, then you better be innovating.
I agree, and I think that some people get too, maybe enamored is not the right word, but they get a little glassy-eyed with TV shows, and that becomes the model of what they see on TV. And
well, you're right, but it's so easy to get sucked into that. I mean, we all have, Lisa. I mean, go back and I want you to be honest with yourself, and I'll be honest with you. Go back to that first moment that you did your first show. Mm-hmm. Your head was the size of Texas. All of ours were. It's like, I'm on TV now. I must be good. However, there's some of us that wake up and go, no, that wasn't the end all to be all. There's more to this than that. But then there's some others that's the way they head, and I think that separates the men from the boys and the women from the girls.
And I agree with you there, because it would be easy to get sucked into that. It can be very seductive, but that isn't even the best part of it at all. So
it's not. And I always try to, when somebody comes to me and they say, I got a new show. I think I even said this to you, Lisa, when you called me and said, I got this. I always try to tell people, it's not the end all be all. There's more to this than just that. That's great. Congratulations. Good job. You've hit a milestone. However, there's many more milestones to hit along the way. Entertainment is just one.
Exactly. And I don't know, what do you think, Stephen? I think that the direction that entertainment with this field is going is changing, and I think it's almost having an identity crisis with what's being portrayed on TV.
Mm-hmm.
I
think go ahead. I'm sorry.
Have you seen some of the brand new shows coming out?
Right. I see a change too, and it's like, and that's good too. I mean, we need to see some change in things, but stop and think about this. And if we're talking just paranormal ghosts now, if we're just talking paranormal ghosts, if we're talking Bigfoot hunting, any of the different types of things that could be out there paranormally, the truth of the matter is if I took a camera and I filmed, let's say I took a camera and I filmed your group, guys, and I filmed what you do in an average night on an average investigation, I would put an audience to sleep.
Well, yeah.
Because we're really boring people, 98.9% of the time.
I am exciting, sir.
I mean, really. I mean, people are like, your life's so exciting. I'm like, you really think so? Okay. All right.
Actually, you two in a room would be exciting.
You and I in a room would be trouble.
You like to go fishing? You like to go fishing? It's more like fishing.
I like to fish.
I like to fish. My grandmother, when I was a kid, used to tell me, because we'd be out fishing and she'd look at me and go, shh, can't talk. The fish won't bite. So when I'm in investigation, that's always going through my mind. Shh, don't talk. The fish won't bite.
Well, Stephen, let's talk about some of the things that you're up to right now. You have a lot of changes that are going on with what you're doing professionally, and why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I've been a free agent for a long time, and it's I left the group thing, and I went out and I helped people. I did a lot of helping people, and I'm still going to do that. But the thing is I kind of missed researching, the roll up your sleeves and learn type of thing. And so there's a group. I moved into St. Louis, Missouri. I bought a house on May 1st, and I'm in the middle of South St. Louis now. For those of you that don't know what South St. Louis is, I'm in the middle of the Lab Mansion, haunted Cherokee Street, the Casa Loma, the haunted Fox Theater, the haunted The Mill, some of the Exorcist case. I mean, the locations are around me. One of the most haunted places I could be in the state of Missouri. And that was really exciting to me. And I was like, so when I got here, I was like, well, where do I go now? So there's a group called St. Louis Paranormal Research Society. And they're the longest standing group in the St. Louis, Missouri area. And I would dare say maybe even the whole state as well, because we're talking decades of research. They're historical. they're paranormal, they're research, and they're also this interesting side of things that I kind of love, which is called urban crawl. So I kind of teamed up with them, and we're out doing some different places. I was out all day to the type of things that probably could make your nightmares a little bit more real. You know, that's the kind of things I love to do. But you know, the thing is it's nice to be connected with people in my own area that are doing the work that I do, and to be able to support them and then support me. I mean, it's a win-win situation for everybody, and hopefully we're all going to learn from it.
Well, do you have any particular things coming up that people can look out for if they're in the St. Louis area?
Pardon me, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Do you have any particular things coming up that people in the St. Louis area should be on the lookout for?
Well, let me tell you, I got a lot, actually. The first thing is coming up is the Fox Theater Ghost Tour. Now, the Fox Theater is an old movie house like they had in the early days of cinema. The big, grand, gold, that sort of thing. You know, big chandelier when you walk in. It's just an amazing place. I worked there in 2000, in the early 90s. And so coming back to it now as an investigator was like going full circle. They decided they wanted to do a ghost tour, so they asked us to come in, St. Louis Paranormal Research Society, and they asked me as well, to come in and do the first ever investigation in the theater. And it turned out to be a very haunted theater, but I knew that going in because in the early 90s, there was one night I was in the theater by myself because I was selling tickets for Phantom. It was the first national tour of Phantom, and people were going crazy for tickets, so I was working late hours, and I came out into the lobby out of my office one night to go home, and I heard somebody walking around, and they were messing with their keys. You could hear the keys jangling around, and you could hear them whistling, and you could hear them walking around. I'm like, who's there? Not an answer, and I could hear, so it just continued. Who's there? Nothing. So I got a little spooked at that point because every hair on my arm stood up. And when I really think about it, it's probably the first paranormal event that I can actually remember to that point, and know that there was something that was not quite right about it. But so anyway, I left. But as I left, I could still hear this going on. Well, the next day I came in and I was talking to somebody. I said, well, you were really late last night. And I said, yeah, I heard this. And I told them, you know, guy walking around whistling, keys jangling. And they said, well, you heard William Fox. You know, it's one of the big stories around here is that people that are in the theater alone at night will sometimes hear him walking around with his keys, opening doors and whistling. You know, William Fox was the obviously the man that built the Fox Theater. So let's fast forward. Let's go to September 13th this year. I go into the Fox Theater and I sit down and I went to go to do the first ghost box session. First thing I turn the ghost box on, guess what happens? Whistling comes through.
Oh, whistling, yeah.
Yeah, the whistling came through. And it was almost like it was the neat moment for me. And because it was almost like, I know you're here, I know you, I know what I did all those years ago, and this is my affirmation to you. And it was just a really, really cool moment. So the Fox Theater, we're doing the Fox, we're doing weekly, oh my gosh, we're doing weekly things at the Lab9 Mansion, St. Louis's most haunted, well, it's one of the top 10 haunted mansions in the whole United States. They put it up there with Amityville and all the others as well. And it's the Lem family, several members of the Lem family committed suicide at different times in this mansion. So it's very, very haunted. I'm going to take you there, Lisa, because there's some places in there that it's just going to blow your mind when you go. Because, I mean, there's even blood stains on the floor that you can take the phosphorus light and see where the blood gets soaked into the wood, because that can never be taken away, or, you know, they just have to replace the floor, even though you don't see it to the naked eye. It's really kind of a creepy, creepy place. And in the upstairs attic, there's a little boy up there. Some call him the Monkey Boy, but there's another story behind Monkey Boy. There was actually a monkey that was kept up there. So people knew that there was a little boy in the attic, and there was also a real monkey. So he got the name Monkey Boy because they were actually seeing the real chimpanzee. But he fell to his death down the stairs. So, when I go up to that top level, a lot of times I'll feel something tug on my shirt like a child would. It's kind of, it's creepy in a sense, but I think even more than creepy, it disturbs me because it reminds me of my own children at that age and how they would pull on my shirt tail. So, the Lab Mansion, very, very cool place. I got some more if you want to hear it.
Well, I do have to tell you one thing before I forget. Your brother from another mother says hi.
That's producer Hip. That's my producer of my new show, The Fear, which is going to be coming out here very soon, which you'll also be able to hear on iHeartRadio. So we're real excited about that. So hi there, Hip. And I just plugged in producer Hip. That's what he was reminding me.
That's what you go.
Mention the radio show, Stephen. I never promote things the way I should.
And I want to officially say that PSL.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much here. I mean, we just announced today that if anybody knows anything about my history, they know that I was one of the stars of the Smash Paranormal hit on Sci-Fi, Children of the Grave. I was also one of the writers on that show. One of the places that I'm going to do Paranormal Crawl will be on October 19th, will be Zombie Road. And Zombie Road is really probably one of the most interesting places the shadow people go. I'm going to take people out there, not at nighttime, though. I'm going to take them out there during the day. Because one of two reasons. I want to give them specific things and specific history about just specific areas. But I also want people to realize that you go to a haunted place, it's not only haunted during the night. Zombie Road is one of those places that's haunted during the day. So we're going to be doing that on October 19th. It's free of charge, by the way. We're not charging anybody for it because we feel strongly about it. So we're going to be going out there. I'm excited about that, too. So we're doing a lot. Me and I can tell you, I'm all over the place.
That's awesome.
No, it's too late now.
No, go ahead.
No, it's too late.
It's too late.
Yeah, I wanted to say that PSL Live is officially international tonight. We have people from London in the chat room.
Awesome.
Well, hello, London. I just mailed a bunch of books out to you guys in the UK.
Stephen would like you to buy his books, please, in the UK.
Yeah, me and Elliot have become shippers. We're like our own personal UPS around here. Trust me, I'm waist high in books at sometimes.
I hear you. Well, I think it's really cool that you're doing things at Zombie Road during the day. You saying that made me think we actually have a very similar location that we're starting events at that we're going to be doing stuff probably during the day for the same reasons. Peace Church Cemetery.
Yeah, for the reasons we don't want people tripping over crap because it's like.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. You're outside. It's not exactly paved, etc. But it's also a place that's very, you have activity day and night. And
right, and I think don't you think that's important to show that though?
Yeah, I think that's something that people get really surprised at. And I've actually read studies that say you're more likely to see something paranormal like 3 in the afternoon than any other time. Which makes a lot of sense with the amount of energy in the atmosphere at that time, but people are always shocked by it.
Right. And what's interesting, so about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we should be into some pretty spooky parts of Zombie Road. Really. And the thing is everybody's always going, Steven, take me to Zombie Road. Steven. And it's like, and I really, Zombie Road was great in the time that I did it and stuff. So I really try not to focus on old things a lot, so I'm always constantly looking for new things to talk about, new things to write about, new things for us all to learn from. And so, but this is one that keeps coming back. And so if you guys want to go to Zombie Road with me, this is your chance. And I suggest you take it because I'm going to tell the gruesome side of Zombie Road. I know the stories. I know the police reports. I know where they bury the bodies. So this is going to be an interesting night.
If we can make it work, we'd love to do that.
Somebody booked us for October.
Yeah. And I had to get clearance to do it. I mean, the Parks Department. Now, the Parks Department weren't really they're not really happy with the idea of Zombie Road. They want to change the image of the road, and I don't blame them because it's a new trail they put through over the top of the road and everything. But he was like, yeah, he goes, I'd like you guys to go there, and I'd like you to take your group there and stuff because I want them to see how wonderful and fantastic the new trail is. I was like, deal. We'll talk about the new trail and stuff, absolutely. Because I think, it was quite a shock to them when the film originally came out, the amount of stir it caused for them. And you kind of have to feel for them in a little ways because that new trail was built on the backs of a whole lot of trespassing tickets. So.
Well, yeah. And, I think that's one thing that slowly is happening is that play sites and especially when you're dealing with like parks and places like that are slowly coming around to the realization that the haunted legends with the property can be beneficial to them as well. But it takes a lot of work and effort to get them there often.
So let's safely take a group through there. Let's safely take a group through there and show them the spots that they're interested in. Let's show them where Tom Halstead took the picture of the shadow people. Let's show them where we captured the images of the shadow people on the film Children in the Grave and where the black mass crossed the road. Let's show them where the different children lost their lives on the road and different things like that happened. Or the mutilated deer that were just lying in fields. Let's show them that. And, you really get an understanding, and this has become a real important theme in what I do. And I did a whole tour, I know you know this, Lisa, I did a whole speaking tour last year called No Place Like Home. Mm-hmm. Now, the idea of No Place Like Home was that we could, and I told Annette, who does a lot of my bookings, I said, listen, we're going to do this tour, and I don't want anything more than 500 miles away from my front door. Because I wanted it to be, no more than a day trip is basically what the rules were. And it was the reason for that is I wanted people to understand that this stuff is right outside your back door. All you have to do is go look for it. It's there. You can do it. And it's not a problem. It's just a lot of times people think they have to go to Waverly or they have to go to one of my favorite places, Ohio State Reformatory, or they have to go to the Queen Mary. No, just step outside your door, and I guarantee you that there's some strange story of some strange thing that happened, and, you'll find a haunting. And keep this in mind. Those places where you hear of urban legends, Zombie Road was an urban legend. I thought when we went there the first time, my intent was to prove an urban legend false. Was not to prove the paranormal at all. And I went, that was supposed to be a nice Halloween walk through Pooh's 100-Acre Wood, maybe a little spooky here and there, and it turned into the Blair Witch Project. And what it taught me is that a lot of these urban legends, where there's smoke, there's fire. Where there's a legend and there's stories, and maybe the stories aren't correct, and maybe they're over dramatic, but in Zombie Road, the stories in the urban legend of Zombie Road was not near as frightening as the reality of Zombie Road. So I want you to keep that in mind too. So don't be afraid to go out to these places that are urban legends because there's something there that started that at some point, and you just may be surprised that you step into something.
Oh, I agree. I can think of several places just offhand in our neck of Missouri that the urban legends are there. A lot of them are wrong as far as the cause of things that happen there, but there's activity there, and often those stories are more compelling than what the legend has become. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah. That's all I was saying. I just agreed with her.
Uh-oh. I'm getting a strange look from John. That's nothing new, but... Crazy.
What? Nothing?
Are you calling me?
I'm in a real creepy mood today, if you guys can't tell. I really am. I'm really hyper, too, because... I started my day at a mausoleum and ended up in a fort that was built in 1695. So, I mean, I've been out to some cool places today. So,
oh, that is cool.
Yeah, that's not like I'm a little jealous, actually.
Yeah, I wish my kids were.
I ain't gonna lie, I mean, you know.
I mowed my grass.
How many people do you know that go, I started my day at a mausoleum?
Steven, I think that's a good line to start a book. And speaking of which, let's talk about your new book.
Oh, yeah, let's do it. You know, you probably meant that a while ago when I went off on another tangent, but oh well. The new book is Blessed Are the Wicked. It's doing tremendously well. When you sit down to write a book, and this is the one main thing I want to say about Blessed, when you sit down to write a book, and this one took me 3 years because I decided to be really, really open and be really, really straightforward and really personal and honest about some things. And, you know, so it took 3 years to write it. And, you know, the end result was that it really is a lesson in how we should live our lives, those of us that deal with the paranormal, and how we should live our lives across the board. And the thing is exciting is when you write something, you hope that someone gets it. It seems like the majority, and I'm talking like 99% of the people that are reading Blessed get it and love it. And that's exciting to me. You know, book sales it can be exciting. And sure, when you get on a chart here and there, that's exciting. But what's more exciting is when somebody understands what you were trying to tell them. And that's what Blessed is doing right now. And I couldn't be more thrilled with that.
Well, and we congratulate you on that. It's, you know, I mean, it's quite an accomplishment. #1 on Amazon in the category. So, you know, that's, you know, quite an accomplishment. We're pretty proud of you for that. But go ahead and, Steven, and tell people give them just a little glimpse of what the book is about.
Sure. It's for those of you that read The Uninvited, this is a standalone sequel. They call it standalone because you could read this book first and then The Uninvited, and it would make sense no matter what. That was very important to me. However, the book actually begins the day after where The Uninvited left off. So you start the day after, and it continues the story. And it became very apparent to me that I needed to write a story, and I had some urging from a psychic from Shreveport, Louisiana, that kept telling me, Steven, you need to write this book. She was 80-something years old. Actually, she died 2 weeks after I completed the book. So you'll notice the book is dedicated to her. But the thing is it became important that there were certain things that I wanted to cover. I wanted to cover some history. I wanted to cover how the whole town had been affected by this haunting. I wanted to cover how I was affected and my family and my friends were affected by this. I wanted to cover what it's like to go public with a haunting. I wanted to cover the side of how it is to be stalked by someone, because that happens quite often within these cases. And I wanted to cover just the overall feeling of what it was like to become an investigator and go looking for answers, which I could take back and understand my own haunting as well as helping people with theirs. It's a very interesting book. It's done in 3 ways. It's done in flashbacks. The flashbacks go all the way back to 1969. They're important. Each of the flashbacks gives something to the book. It's about something that I'm going to talk about or that I had just talked about. There's the diary section of the book. Again, the diary is the continuing from the day after The Uninvited all the way up until December of 2013. So, you know, there's that part that's going on. So you have the flashbacks, the diary, and then you have the nightmares. And anybody that knows about me knows that I have some pretty crazy nightmares, sometimes prophetic nightmares, actually. They're very telling in some ways. And all of these things lead to the story. And when you combine all 3 of them together, you get a pretty compelling and good look at what a haunting is and how it works and how it affects people. And I think that's really important. The name of the book kind of throws people off because, you know, some people go, Blessed or Wicked, I don't understand. Is that blasphemous? No, it's not, actually. And it's not scary either. Blessed are the wicked means that at some point in your life, you have to get to a point to be able to survive. Everything that we survive in this life, you have to get to a point where you can look back and forgive all these things. I bless this thing that happened to me because I learned this. Or I bless this person that hated me, hurt me, beat me, whatever, because of this. And the most important in my case was I blessed the demon that tried to take my life. And because everybody deserves a blessing in this life, blessed are the wicked. So it makes sense now, doesn't it? It's a book about forgiveness in some ways. It's a book about positivity in some ways. It's a book about investigation in some ways. So there's something in there that everyone will find. I hear that what people tell me that they have boxes of Kleenex when they're reading this book. So I'm just going to warn you that it's very emotional as well.
Well, but that open that honest emotion is what makes any book, whatever the genre is, compelling, and that's what makes it connect to people. Whether you're telling, this kind of story or it's a fiction novel of whatever, there has to be that honest emotion from the soul.
I think, especially when we're dealing, Lisa, with a haunting that was so negative, and there's some in the field that would tell you it's probably one of the most negative hauntings we've seen in a long time. To deal with something like that, I think the human emotion was important to it because I'm asking you to make some leaps, even paranormal investigators. I'm asking you to make some leaps in understanding. And that honesty has to be there. My mom told me when I first came out with the story of Union, Missouri, and obviously my mom and dad lived through it with us, so did my brothers and sisters, plus my friends. But she said to me, she goes, you know what? She goes, this is what you have to keep in mind as you go out into the world with this. It is what it is. You're not going to change it to make anybody feel better. However, you need to make them understand and make them understand with honesty. Always be honest. And that's what she said to me. And she was very, very right in that. And she was very, very wise in that. Because the people that we've been able to reach, the people that have learned from what happened to us, they've learned from my mistakes. They learned from my triumphs. They learned from the horrible things. They learned from the good things. All of those things have been able to help a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And her advice is what made that possible. And I'll always be grateful for that because in the end, life is not about you and me personally. We cannot look at our lives and say, this is about me because it's not. Life's about other people and how you help people. And in the end, that's where your reward comes from.
Well, I agree. And what would you say, a lot of people would say with what you went through, and a very extreme case, and one in which the church actually extensively concluded that the demonic was involved, many would point and say, well, that's why you shouldn't be involved in the paranormal, that's why you should leave it alone. Turn that around, Steven. What would you say is the result of you having explored your experiences through investigation? What's the good and the bad side of that?
Well, the thing is investigation is what it is, and it is there for a reason, I think, and it's for us to understand. However, the problem with this comes into, and it's not that what we're saying with these cases that this is the reason that you shouldn't do the paranormal. Think of it this way. As an investigator, you walk into a case like this, you need to help somebody. Help is a very, very important thing in life, to help someone else. So when you walk into a case and you come into something like this, here's where the problem is, and this is where the road separates. When it becomes the paranormal is dangerous to you, or you are able to help. A lot of times ego is the problem. Ego is what plays into it, where you go in with the case and you go, I can solve this. I don't need any outside help. That's when you get in trouble. Somebody that goes into a case and they realize they're standing in the middle of one of those, and I do this. I do this myself. I know when the point is when I have to say, okay, I need some outside help. Whether that be clergy, whether that be whoever. mind you. It's not always Catholic. I mean, I did an exorcism with an evangelical exorcist, by the way. I've worked with people in Saudi Arabia on a jinn case. I mean, I'm always able to take my feelings and put them to the side. Everybody thinks I'm Catholic. I'm not. I'm a good UCC Protestant boy, believe it or not. You know, so it's more amazing the church did what they did for me. But you know, it's to be able to take that ego and put it aside. It's not about the paranormal being bad. It's the ego within the paranormal that's bad. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, and that sums up, you know, I think our views on it very well, and how we try to approach things, and what we try to tell people as well.
Here's an important point, Lisa. Think of it this way, and even with dealing with the paranormal and dealing with private cases and stuff, it's not about death, it's about living.
Oh, I agree. And even what you learn from entities, and you can debate whether they're past human spirits or, you know, time loops or dimensional, whatever. The lessons are for us here now.
Yeah, there's so many morality lessons in these stories, in these histories, in these happenings, that if you go look for them, you'll find them. And what is a morality lesson? A morality lesson is something that you can take back to your own life and help you adjust your own life and how you live. That, you know, you have to take what a potential negative, and, you know, in the paranormal is this way. It's simple. If you look at the paranormal and you look for negative, you know, negative creates negative, that's what you're going to get back. If you go into the paranormal with positivity, positivity is what you're going to take out of it. If you come out and you have the feeling that you understand evil to the nth core, or do you understand how light works in your life and how that changes it? You decide what that is, but I'm going to tell you, you got to be very careful, those of you that are just overly interested in that dark side.
Yeah.
I can't agree more. And you know,
had a little bit of that last night at a tour.
Yeah.
Overly addicted to the dark side.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a state of mind, isn't it? I mean, really,
yeah.
it's where you put. So, I mean, if you've got a lot going on in your life, let's say you're going through a divorce, your job is failing, you're unhappy with your life, then you're probably a person that needs to put paranormal investigation and research on the shelf for a little bit. Get your life straightened up and then come back. Because the thing is that you come into something with negativity and those negative feelings and all of that, you will get manipulated. You really will. You have to keep a positive mindset. One of the things that I said along, Mr. Tim Yancey, a good friend of mine, almost he's like a brother to me. Both of us have always said to people is, you know, it's about things like happiness, family, faith, love, humor. Humor's very important. And those are the things that build your armor. And those are the things that keep you safe from these things. Those are the things that for those of us that do spiritual warfare, are able to go out and do the spiritual warfare. It has nothing to do with my thoughts or what I'm doing. You know, that armor comes from a different place than me. And, you know, and you have to draw upon all of those things, you know, in any given time. It's not the blessed metal. I mean, I could give a blessed metal to a negative person and it won't do anything to them. I give a blessed metal to a positive person, whether they realize it in their mind or not. I'm giving them something that comes with a good intent. They take the good intent. That good intent is what does the work. You know, if you're a negative person, it's, you know, put all the metal, you know, you could cover your body in metals, blessed metals. It is not going to help you, because if you're not walking in a state of positivity and grace, you will never be in grace. Nothing.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think that's you've come to a very good point for people to ponder and leave off. We're at the end of the hour, and Stephen, we sure appreciate you coming on and talking, and we encourage everyone to go out and buy Blessed Are the Wicked and to check out your events. Where can they reach you?
They can reach me at my website, Steven at Steven A. LaChance. Well, I just give you my email. Steven at StevenALaChance.com is my email. Website, StevenALaChance.com. It's my whole name with my middle initial, .com. We have an October calendar out there. You can see where we're going to be and what we're going to be doing and all the exciting things that are going on. And then one last note, on October 5th, is the worldwide release of Blessed Are the Wicked. The United States has it, now the world gets it. So I'm pretty excited now. Things are good. I'm happy, and I'm glad to be out there. And I got some really exciting things coming for everybody. I'm working hard. I'm working on screenplays, books, movies, you name it. It's coming your way.
Well, awesome, Steven, and we will talk to you back here soon, and we'll talk soon about our plans in St. Louis. Thank you very much. Sounds like a plan. Thank you guys for having me. Happy Halloween. You too.
Thanks for coming, Steven, and everyone stay tuned for Selena Rome, Closer to Death. I think she has a rerun with Mr. Calhoun this evening. Have a good night.
Okay.